Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we'll be talking about a potential new large winter storm system that will be taking shape into this upcoming week. This thing looks very powerful, very large. It's going to have a lot of moisture and affect a good portion of the United States directly with snow and rain. And then a good portion of the United States indirectly with its strong winds and the warm air that will be pumping out ahead of it. So a lot of details to kind of go over, but I'll try keeping the video relatively quick and concise. So let's start off by looking at the GFS, so Global Forecasting System. This is one of the better models that is usually used for anything that is medium to long range or even short range. It's a very good model. Notice, as I mentioned in my last video, that I talked about this very unusual pattern. It's very peaceful as of now, and there won't be any big storm systems moving in for the next few days. You can see there is a little almost, you could call it more of a disturbance across the country right here, bringing a little bit of showers and storms across the eastern United States. Again, nothing significant in terms of precipitation amounts or in terms of its coverage. You can see that it's also relatively quick. While the rest of the United States is mainly dealing with a calm and quiet pattern, the Northwest has been active the past few days, and it will continue to do so. This will all break and change into a more active pattern for the rest of the United States once we start seeing the system move in and actually go beyond just the Northwest. So the past several days have been already pretty active for the Northwest, but it's going to get a lot more active. Note that as I put this into motion, we see that we have a large system that moves into the Northwest on Sunday and Monday. Now, for a few days, all this does is just pump a lot of moisture into the northwestern United States and into southwestern Canada, producing rain and snow. However, notice that as I push this into Wednesday, Thursday, we see very strong winds develop out of this system, which is very indicative of a strong moisture transport. And yes, you can see that temperature anomalies will be supportive of very above average temperature levels. So we will have areas in the upper plains of the United States, in the 60s and 70s, which is very warm for this time of the year. Notice that we have heavy snow already developing across a good portion of California, Nevada, especially Idaho, Montana. So this is a long kind of fetched system. It will be lasting for quite a good while. Note we have, again, nothing really developing across the plains. So this calm, nice pattern will actually be exaggerated by this system, other than a strong slightly winds from the south. It will be very nice weather for this pretty much a whole entire week across a vast majority of the United States and southern Canada, excluding the west. And you can see that that's when we start seeing some showers again turn more into some heavier snow bands. You can see Utah, almost the whole state of Wyoming, Montana dealing with cooler air, and obviously that snowfall. So while this may not necessarily be a massive snowstorm for the eastern United States, it's a pretty big one for the west. And you can see this starts delivering look, Wyoming is for several days almost stuck under that snow from this system, and unlike some systems that we do see at this time of the year, it does develop a warmer side and cold front, but it really doesn't develop into a massive strong system. It obviously is very powerful across the west, but once it moves off into the plains, it quickly kind of diminishes. Notice we will have some snow across the Dakotas and into Minnesota, but on the warmer side we have some rain, and this thing really quickly kind of falls apart. That is at least the first part of it, because as I put this into motion now, again, this is Saturday, so the system's going to be a long duration event. It's going to come in several pieces. Notice that portions of central Canada will pick up a little bit of snow, but what we do see is this kind of long stretched out cold front of rain. Not really connected to an area of circulation at this point, but there could be some very strong storms and heavy rainfall across a area of the United States next weekend, so that's something to watch for. Notice we have continued moisture coming into the northwest, as a typical La Nina pattern does. And look what we start seeing. This is where models really start disagreeing, and the European, GFS, Canadian all show different things. So you can see we start seeing some sort of a plume of moisture going towards the north. Whether or not this develops into some sort of a storm remains to be seen. You can see, though, it has a lot of rain, a lot of severe weather, definitely something that we'll be watching. And notice we have another system moving in onto the northwest that's going to be bringing a lot of moisture, but again, not necessarily making it much further than just a few states its impact. And you can see later on maybe something squeezes through, but doesn't really develop into anything extraordinary. So definitely interesting. Let's take a look at some of these precipitation amounts. Total accumulated precip, including rain and snow. So you can see that as I put this through the weekend, we can see all the moisture that falls in terms of mainly snow across the west. I'll show you the snowfall amounts in just a second, but do note if we were to see that scenario with that stretched out, stalled out cold front, we could see a lot of rain across, a large area of the central United States next weekend from this storm, kind of the second part of it. So that's definitely something to note. Snowfall will actually be pretty impressive for the west and maybe even the northern plains, picking up the first kind of snowfall of the year. Definitely kind of a slow start in terms of that. There hasn't been a massive snowstorm here yet, and usually by November timeframe is when we start seeing that pop up in the models, so it's interesting we haven't seen that. But again, you can see Idaho, Montana, Wyoming picking up quite a bit of snow from this, so that's definitely going to be good. Notice as I put on a different model, like the Canadian model, you can see shows a very similar pattern, kind of a stretch of snow across southern Canada. It's not as far south as the GFS, but it shows quite a bit of snow across the mountainous northwest. And if I put this into motion, you could see that again, compared to what we'll see in the future, the pattern we have going on right now is very calm, excluding the west. We do have that system that moves in. Notice Thursday, pretty warm across a good portion of the United States, very cold and snowy across the west, relatively. Obviously, not everyone will be seeing snow. You can see the Canadian doesn't really develop a system, a snowstorm, if you will, across the plains with this. It does drag that cold front, though, and that could produce some pretty heavy, again, rain and severe weather. Notice that as I put this into motion, the Canadian, unlike the GFS, brings in that second system and actually pushes it through the mountains. And you can see potentially is in the beginning stages of producing some sort of some sort of odd winter storm. I say odd because there's a lot of features in this pattern that is interesting. First off, we have a lot of many areas of closed low pressures. You can see that are just completely rain, no snow. That could be contributing to quite a bit of severe weather. Notice that across the northern and northwestern United States, we have quite a bit of areas that are going to be obviously seeing snow, but a lot of that doesn't necessarily make it way past the mountains, so that's definitely something interesting to note. And yeah, you can see a lot of these kind of systems that are just very top heavy in terms of the snow, but no real warm front and whatnot. So definitely interesting. Let me show you now the European model. European, again, one of the preferred models by many. I think it's a very good model. And notice it shows again that active westward pattern. Nothing really going on across the eastern United States of noteworthiness. Notice there's that system that we're watching into Tuesday and Wednesday, moving across the west, slowing down, producing quite a bit of snow across Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. And you can see that it goes very far to the north, really way too far to the north to produce any cold front and kind of warm side of this. Though it does leave some energy behind across the west that could contribute into more showers, more snow, and maybe potentially another system down the line. Notice each model is slightly different, but all of them by next week can show a pretty good heavy rain threat and storm threat for severe weather across the south central United States. So that's definitely something interesting and concerning because it shows consistency. And you can see the European definitely blossoms a big storm out of this. Has a nice area of very heavy rain to the north. Whether or not that will be more snow or rain, you can see it's a bit of a mix according to the European. Each model again shows its own different scenario, and you can see every single one though shows a lot of activity across the west and northwest, and you can see the European continues showing active weather there. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting pattern, but there will be a series of, again, large systems moving in. And exactly how each one of those will unfold is a bit of a mystery still. Total precip outlook, you can see rather active, especially for the central kind of U.S. and the northwest and the west, I would say, in general as well. Total snowfall, also pretty impressive, again, mainly for the northwestern United States. From the European model, you can see states like Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon, Montana picking up a lot of snow. Some amounts further south into, California, but these aren't really anything too extreme. And notice British Columbia, Alberta, Canada picking up a lot, especially British Columbia. I mean, goodness, that is very, very impressive for those snowfall amounts right there. So let's go back now, and I want to show you the European precipitation type and rate, so kind of the simulated radar. But I want to go back to yesterday midnight, just to show you kind of how changeable this model has been, and this doesn't just apply to the European, this applies to every model. So obviously all of them do show a increased activity from the north and west, right? We have a big system that moves in, but these models, I mean, every single new model run shows a different scenario from this. You can see that 2 days ago, the European at midnight showed really nothing too extraordinary going on across the plains. It does have that series of very moisture-laden waves of precipitation across the western United States, but none of them really format into any big system until potentially later on the European starts developing something. Let's keep going on further now, closer into time. This is midnight, or this was noon yesterday. Notice that again it showed a pretty calm pattern. There it has that system across the west, and you can see, unlike at midnight 12 hours later, it showed a pretty substantial storm developing across the United States. Yesterday this was at the same time frame, kind of the model that was the most available at the time I'm recording the video. If I was to record a video yesterday, I would be showing you this, and you can see it developed into a monster storm. I mean, lots of moisture, lots of precip, right? I mean, that would be a legendary storm system if that were to take shape. Now, 12 hours later, we go into midnight of this past night, and we do have, the continued flow that, again, that system that moves in, but there's a few small differences, and no, there really isn't ever a system that fully formulates of such magnitude, and we do have, obviously, several storms, but none of them turn into anything similar to what the other models show. Still, a impactful system. You can see there's one, there's another one, there's two more, so, a very active pattern, just no singular large system. And now with the most recent model run that came out at noon, we see something of similar notes, again, in terms of change. Potentially, again, a snowmaker first, and then maybe some sort of a system developing here. We'll have to see. It's definitely interesting. It's still relatively far out, these waves of precipitation, and when the models start disagreeing. But yeah, definitely something we'll just have to keep an eye on for, because as of now there is clear indications that something will be going on, something will be happening. It's just that it's hard to tell what exactly. Let's go through the GFS, some of its previous model runs to show you. Again, there it is. You can see some of these, that first big system moving in this week, and what results of that, it's still a bit uncertain. You can see some models like the GFS show a bit more snow into it with it, and then again it shows that cold front that potentially could develop into a stronger system, which some models do. The GFS again develops it into a system, lacks really cold air on the north side of it, so no snowstorm ever comes of it, and it disintegrates pretty quickly. A lot of closed low pressures. And yeah, the GFS today at noon, very similar in terms of its activity, but just a lot more disagreements, even from within itself. Notice it showed a lot more snow. The more recent model runs show a lot more snow across the western United States with this first system. Does develop that strong cold front, strong rain system, but it doesn't quite merge this system with that cold air to produce a massive system. And it just, you can see, keeps it active for sure, and keeps us guessing what it's going to do next. But yeah, definitely inconsistency has been a very common trait of these models here. Yesterday at midnight, this is what the GFS was showing. I'm just going to run through this quickly so it gets to load. Right now, let's take it a bit slower. Again, there's our first system moving in, quite a bit of mountain snow. That seems consistent. There's that second system. Again, nothing comes of that. And what goes on later on is just anyone's guess. So, yeah, a lot of disagreements, but it does seem that the models are agreeing on the fact that there will be a system moving into Tuesday and Wednesday of this upcoming week across the northwestern United States. Really will start impacting the Northwest Monday and Sunday, but it really starts becoming more noteworthy by the time we get into Thursday and Wednesday, and that's when it starts dumping potentially some heavy snow across the western United States and shooting some precip into southern Canada and maybe the northern United States. So yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. Yeah, but definitely patterns are going to get a lot more active compared to what we're seeing now. Alright, that's basically it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.